Do you feel the vibes?
What's up, YouTube community, and welcome back to the Atheist channel with your host, Atheist. First of all, I want to say thanks to all my subscribers, old and new. Thanks to all my flat earthers and all the other dodo birds who like to listen to my channel and troll. I love it. Thanks to all the Christians, the crazy Christian trolls and Hindu trolls that I have. And I have a lot of Hindu trolls now because I made a video on Hinduism and a lot of them didn't like it. Some of them were very respectable and intelligent. Some of them didn't like it, keep talking about, oh, Hinduism is atheism too. Be quiet. And Hinduism is not a religion. Shut up for the last time. But anyway, this particular video is about one particular argument that I supposedly had tackled probably months ago, but I got off into other things and other topics that I wanted to tackle, part ones and part twos of different subsets of religion and belief. But this particular argument, which is called the FTA, for its acronym, or the fine-tuning argument, which is an argument that a lot of you may be familiar with. But I guess I would have to say, like I've said before, I've tackled the cosmological argument for God. I refuted it. So have many others. I've tackled the moral argument for this particular God, whatever God you want to say. I've tackled the ontological argument for God. I've spoke in small parts, I guess, about the teleological argument for God, which is what is called argument from design, which is pathetic, intelligent design. I talked about that in different videos, but I don't think I've specifically made a video refuting or debunking the teleological argument or the argument from design. I may do that later. It's so weak though. But I really planned on doing this video months ago because I would have to say that this fine-tuning argument is probably the best arsenal within the theist weapon bank. But it's one of the weakest ones as well. But it's one that we really need to, I guess, we should more focus on, besides even the cosmological argument or the ontological argument. You know, I kind of like going at all those arguments. I like the moral argument too, because you still have Christians today saying, well, if you don't, just like a clip we played on our show last week from Steve Harvey. Just stupid questions like, well, if you don't believe in God, and where does your moral compass come from? So the moral argument is important too, to keep destroying and refuting. But the fine-tuning argument is an argument basically that is basically propagated by so-called Christian scientists or Christian elite or Christian intelligentsia, or whatever they want to call themselves. And what this argument basically says is that if any physical constant, whatever physical constant we're talking about, whether it's expansion rate or whether it's proton versus electron ratio or the cosmological constant, the argument is that if any of these constants was to change just by 1/60th, right, then life as we know wouldn't exist. Gravity wouldn't exist as we know it, and blah, 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 and so forth and so on. So in other words, every constant that we know of in physics and quantum mechanics, and et cetera, had to be perfectly put together and intelligently created by God. Now, I know this makes a lot of questions. It arises a lot of questions, particularly first question that you should ask these people, and they never ask, and they never can answer them. William Lane Craig is one of the main ones who like this. He loved this argument as well, and Sean Carroll destroyed him in a debate. If you haven't seen the debate between Sean Carroll and William Lane Craig, specifically on this debate, on this topic, I'm going to put it in the video. But the one main thing that they say, if these constants would change just a little bit, then we wouldn't have life. And obviously this means that God created. But the first question I want to ask before I even tear off into this weak argument is, what God? And how do you predicate that it's your Christian God? Or if Muslims use the same argument, for example, or Hindus. Christians don't have a copyright or trademark to say that the fine-tuning argument, if we was to say that their personal God is the cause of these constants being the particular equation and in the particular equation and fraction that they are now, that it was actually their personal God who did it. Well, that's the first brick wall that they run into, because they know they can't prove that. We know it. So what God did it? Was it Zeus? Was it Allah? Was it Shemesh of the Babylonian gods? Was it any of the Hindu gods? Was it Vishnu or Vashti or Brahman? Who was it? What God did this? That's the first question to ask. How can you predicate, Christians, Muslims, whoever want to use this particular argument, how do you predicate that it was your particular deity of your particular religious book? Okay, shoot yourself in the head on that one. Secondly, when we think about this argument of fine-tuning, first thing that have to come to mind is that comes to my mind. And Sean Carroll raises a lot of other great points, of course, because he's one of the top physicists in the world. So he definitely can handle that argument much better than I can, even though I did go to school for physics myself. But I did not get up in the higher degrees that he did. But another thing comes to my mind as far as when we talk about the fine-tuning argument. And what comes to my mind is the anthropic principle. The anthropic principle. Those who are not familiar with it, I guess I will put that in a slide too. But basically, the anthropic principle deals with humans, basically, coming from, anthropology, anthro, meaning human, basically. This principle is basically humans, or how long we've been here, what have we observed. This is basically just broken down in layman terms what the anthropic principle is. So when we think about the anthropic principle, and we think about and what we know to be the age of the universe, at least 14 billion years old, and we understand this through expansion. And we think about how old the universe is, even how old the earth is, even what the rock we sit on, being at least 4 billion years old. Why would a God, an intelligent being, create such not only the age of the universe, but just the size of the universe? Just that principle alone contradicts a fine-tuning argument, because when we talk about the length of time that the universe has been here versus the length of time that humans has been here, it makes no sense to say that an intelligent being fine-tuned this universe just for humans, but this universe has been here billions of years longer than we've even thought about being here. Not only now, like I said, I wanted to mention the length of time that we've been here, humans, and the universe has been here. But how about the size? We know for a fact, in the last 30, 40, 50, 60 years, that our galaxy, what we call the Milky Way, is in a cluster of galaxies. Andromeda being one of the galaxies that's within our cluster. And our cluster is one of the smallest clusters in the galaxy. And I think in the universe, and in our cluster of galaxies, there's probably about 15, 16 clusters that are clustered up together. Combined with a whole bunch of other clusters of galaxies, we're talking about hundreds of billions of suns. Which means if we have hundreds of billions of suns and we have even more planets or rocks surrounding these particular suns, it seems logical and reasonable to anybody, not even an elitist scientist, to know that if we have all of these suns, then what we call Goldilocks zones, which the Earth is what we consider a Goldilocks zone. A Goldilocks zone, which the term Goldilocks comes from the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Eating the porridge, and she wanted to eat the one that was just right. The mother, the papa, Y'all know the story. But this is what science calls a Goldilocks zone. Is basically a zone that is close enough to the sun to the point where it's not too close to burn up like Venus, and it's not far away to freeze like Mars or other planets. In other words, the Earth is in a Goldilocks zone. But a lot of Christian apologists and Christian pseudoscientists say, well, see, why is there no other life on other planets? Then God had to just make Earth in this perfect zone just for life. Well, see, the thing about that, what simply contradicts that is because, once again, when we go back to all of the billions of suns that we have, all of the billions of stars and galaxies, then just by probability alone, we know that there has to be other planets within Goldilocks zones. But we don't reach these galaxies. We don't know what's on these galaxies because we haven't reached them yet. But just simple common sense probability tells us that the Earth cannot be the only planet that's in a particular Goldilocks zone in all of these galaxies. With that being said, think about this when we talk about probability. Even we understand this in science. If something happens once, just one time, just one time, then that means it happened. That means it's not impossible, meaning that for you to think that the Earth is the only planet out of billions and trillions of planets that would be in a Goldilocks zone would basically be begging the question and be showing a lot of ignorance. Secondly, when we think about, some type of being that has so-called fine-tuned the universe, if the universe, like Sean Carroll and others have said, even Victor Stinger, late physicist, if the universe had been fine-tuned by some creator, it would definitely look different. I would think that there would be more of a perfection, not just on Earth, but on a lot of other planets that would be in a better rotation, a better position that they are in. The universe is really utterly a chaotic place. When we talk about a chaotic place, we're talking about 99.9.9999999 of life does not exist. So when we're talking about something that would be fine-tuned by God, then the question must be asked again, even going back to the anthropic principle. If a God fine-tuned this whole universe just for a little bitty planet called Earth to be fine-tuned for humans, then the question must be asked, then why is it so devoid of humans, of human life? It makes no sense when you ask the question. Not only does that not make sense according to the anthropic principle, but it makes no sense that we also know through history, through Earth history, that there's been at least 5 major mass extinctions of life. So when we talk about a God, some type of God who has somehow fine-tuned Earth, how could that be when there's this history that we've shown of things becoming extinct? At least 5 mass extinctions in our history. Not only that, simple things like ultraviolet rays in the sun causing skin cancer, all type of skin malignant type diseases. What is fine-tuned about that? And I've always said this before. What about hurricanes, tsunamis, tornadoes that kill people every day? You even have a season for these things. I've said this before in videos. If there was some type of God that loved humans, obviously, according to what you people think, and he fine-tuned the universe for humans, or at least, don't even worry about the universe. He could at least just fine-tune the planet Earth. If he'd just fine-tuned Earth, don't you think he had enough power? Because you people say he's omnipotent, all-powerful. Don't you think he could have at least fine-tuned the Earth to create a different ecosystem that would not have to have hurricanes and tsunamis and so forth that destroys human life, destroys human property, destroys things for future generations? A family losing all of their belongings in a tornado or earthquake, or losing a baby, a 6-month-old child. This might be the only child this mother could have, or the only children this mother could have, and then they're dead because they fell in the earth in an earthquake, or they died in a tornado. I mean, I don't think your God thought this out too good. Therefore, he doesn't exist to me. And he's definitely not worthy to be prayed to or worthy of any type of worship. It's a very chaotic thinking God who couldn't do something better than what he did. So it's impossible for me to believe that the universe and Earth is fine-tuned. I'm sorry, I can't go with it. And it's another thing, even when we go back to the physical constants, and Victor Stinger made a point about this in his book that he wrote about 6-7 years ago before he died. And Sean Carroll made a good point about this too. Even when we go back to certain physical constants, what we don't know for a fact, and what William Lane Craig always try to use, which he's a rhetorical puppet. But what we don't know for a fact that if some of these concepts were different, and then we do know for a fact that certain concepts can be different and there still can be life. We just don't know what type of life it can produce. It doesn't mean that life cannot be produced if certain concepts would change. It just means that we don't know what type of life. We understand that we're carbon-based. So when we talk about things like, for example, I'll give an example, the tri-alpha fusion. Tri-alpha fusion deals with carbon-based, and we know tri-alpha fusion can only work if a certain pressure and temperature within stars, right, within our stars, and, you know, just to give you a little backplay of the term disaster, disaster is a Latin term that comes from big, and star, disaster, a star. So we're talking about a disaster coming, Latin term understood stars to represents disaster. But when we look at the pressure and temperature inside of a star, we know that this is what causes carbon-based life. But we also know that pressure and temperature inside these stars changes and it fluctuates according to if fusion is going on or not. So in other words, it's not something inside the stars where pressure and temperature stays the same just for tri-alpha fusion to take place. That's not the case. Another point that has to be made as far as dealing with constants is simulations that's just been done within the last, I say, 5 years. We know through, and a matter of fact, I'm going to put this is inside Science Link, real Science Link, inside of this link too. Well, these simulations have been done. It's actually proven that universes could sustain life totally different from ours. Okay. In other words, we don't know for a fact that all life has to be carbon-based. That's the first fact that these particular Christian apologists push and don't tell you. We don't know this for a fact. So to say that this universe, this carbon-based life that we have, that we came through tri-alpha fusion, we do not know that this is the only life. We do know for a fact that there can be other life forms formed outside if these concepts was to change a little. So this argument is very weak. It's very illogical, and they have no evidence to prove their particular hypothesis. But I think this is an argument that we should tackle more because it's like Sean Carroll said, it's one of their most used arguments within the last 10 years, I would say. But it's weak. It's stupid. It goes against everything that we know. Like I said, I'm going to put all these links, especially about the simulations. These simulations basically in the last 5 years have basically debunked the fine-tuning argument on its own. So basically, I mean, the argument is kind of dead just through these simulations that we've shown and tested and experimented on. But I probably wind up doing a part 2 on this particular subject because it's a good subject and I like debunking it and refuting it because Christians try to hang on to things like this. But once again, I'm the Emperor Atheist. Thanks for watching. I'm out. Peace.